All right, and welcome to another Talking Tactical podcast. Stream, live show, podcast, depends on how you're checking us out. Got my buddy Forge on tonight. We are going to be talking communication on the paintball field, maybe even outside the paintball field. So, Forge, welcome to the TTP.
Thanks for having me, bro. Appreciate it, man.
So, for those who don't know, Forge is involved in the paintball community, player himself, also does the Unmasked with Forge videos where he gets interviews of paintballers. I was on the show, I think, second last show.
Yes,
Maybe.
you were.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So during the show, I promised Forge that I would bring him in for the podcast on communication. So if anyone's like, man, why aren't they doing a communication podcast yet? It's like, no, I have to get Forge on this. There's a promise made. So so we have beard up for the evening. I have my Christmas gift of a tankard is what my cup is called. Now I love to say, I'm like, I have a tankard of beer. Or I'm like, I have a tankard of ale. This is amazing.
I'm just having my Alaskan white in a bottle. That's the way I like it. It's easy.
Assistant continues. Go ahead.
I don't have to clean the glass when I'm done. Just throw it away.
Yeah, that works too. I just hate drinking out of a can, and my beer came in a can originally. So,
Right.
All right. So, communication on the field. So let's talk initially. Forge, what do you think communication on the field means?
Well, you can look at it a few different ways. But I think the most important thing is the way you talk to and relay information back and forth between the players, the operators on the field, and also command element if you're playing like a scenario game. How you do that, that's basically communication.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest thing there is the relay. So a lot of people will say like, "Oh, my team never talks to me," or "I never know what's going on the field," or "I talk and yell at people all the time and they never respond." And I think that's a great thing. Is it is that two-way conversation. So breaking it down a little bit. So let's start with your walk-on days. So you head up to a paintball field, semi-local one, so you're not there all the time. So you know people, but you don't know everybody. They don't all know you. How do you get the communication started initially?
That depends on the game, and it depends on who's there. I mean, you can, I don't know. For me, for instance, when I go to a field, if it's a walk-on day, which, by the way, I haven't done a walk-on day in I don't know how long. But when I was doing the walk-on days, I'd go there and I'd kind of size everybody up, see who's what and what they're doing and their body posture, how they're shooting. I'd more than likely let them, run a game, and I'd just kind of observe, and see who the callers are, see who's talking to each other, and also kind of see who's pairing up with each other and kind of learning the groups. It's funny. I was listening to Nate, talking on the panel yesterday, and he was talking about, when you go on the field, everybody has a red bandana on their arm, and the other side has blue bandanas on their arm. Whatever the color is, doesn't really matter. But you all work as a unit. But really, what happens is, even in walk-on days, that entire team segregates themselves into smaller groups.
Yep.
And usually those are separate teams. Now, those teams have different ways of talking to each other. A core group of guys, let's just say 5 members, for instance. They have a communication line that they understand is those 5 individuals. Now, that communication group between those 5 is going to be different, and most of the time is going to be different than another, say, 5 different players that are playing over on the other side, or next to them, or whatever the case is. So there has to be some kind of merger in between the two. And generally, the leaders of one team and the leaders of another team will automatically sort of kind of understand what's going on, because they're looking. That's their job as leaders of their respective teams, to kind of see what's going on in the battlefield and make those judgment calls as to what they need to do. And you'll hear them talking back and forth to each other. It's like, hey, I'm gonna take my guys over here. You take your guys over here. We'll flank on the other side. So it almost happens. It almost happens by itself. And if you have good leaders on the field that know how to communicate to their individual teams, that will automatically start to happen.
Yeah, 100%. Now, one thing is that I think the biggest thing when you're going to a walk-on day or even like playing with the other teams is that people have preferences of calling stuff, nicknames, things like that. So
sure.
I had a walk-on day 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. And our big thing there was that it was all concrete, and it's like the field's sand and concrete barriers. So it's like the tunnels, the cylinders, stuff like that. Like
Sure.
it's all like old piping stuff that they used. So it's like one of the jokes is like someone's like, they're at the pipe, they're at the cylinder, and everyone's like, they're
Which one?
all cylinders. This doesn't help. And so
Right.
it was just like, oh crap. So then, but one of the things is that the field had actually set it up so that they had numbers on the main parts of the field. And so
Oh, nice.
I started to learn. I was like, no, like they're at the 6, they're at this 8.
Yes.
They're all of those things. And that's where, like, yeah, just learn the nicknames, learn how the general descriptions. But like you said, like, look who the leaders are and who is talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is like if you don't have markers like that, because a lot of fields don't. You'll go into there's a field I used to play at. It's called Jungle Island. It's down there in Southern California, and that particular field has I think at that time there was 5 or 6 different fields. They got I think 8 or 9 now. But you'd be on one field and it's just like you said, it's pipes. Everything's pipes. Well, how do you tell your neighbor which pipe they're in?
Mm-hmm.
The old fallback, this is something you learn in the military or anywhere else. You use the clock. They're at my 3, they're at my 9, they're at my 12 or whatever. They're coming from my 6. You know what I mean? So that's the old fallback, and that's something that in communications and using comm, not just radios but verbally, any type of communication, there has to be that understanding, that general understanding of basic communication.
Mm-hmm.
So you can always fall back on what does everybody know. You go to a milsim game, they all know the general. Most people know the general comm stuff like that, like using the clock to position tell a guy to go to my 3, or they're coming from my 1 or whatever the case is. They can understand that there is that general.
And
but you can also go ahead.
I was gonna say the clock is really great. Again, it comes back down to like a team thing, but one thing that I've seen players do is they break down the field northeast, west, south, but it's not
it's just another clock.
Yeah, not north, but north of where we started from. So the enemies are at north, our base is south, east, and west, because people can quickly think east, right, okay, west, left, like stuff like that, but it throws people off who are trying to listen into your communication, because they're just like, north is the like middle part of the field, and I'm coming, what? Like, so. Yeah,
generally, I try to stay away from the north, south, east, west, because that is very confusing, because, well, what is he talking about? His north? Or is it,
yeah, like I said,
true north, or
more of the team
it's like,
thing. But even like the clock, I've seen people get thrown off by that. And one of the biggest things too, though, actually, when you're communicating on the field, is you can give a lot of commands, but I call out for stuff. Where are they? How's right side? How's left? And like you'll notice too, like I had one game where I think I screamed at a guy for a good minute, like, where are they on the right? Where? Because I wanted to make a bump, and I kept sticking my head out and a shot would come, and I needed to know where it was for which bunker I could make it to from there. And we walked to the field, and I'm like, I was screaming at you for a minute. And he goes, you were talking to me? I couldn't hear anything, just because his adrenaline was rushed so hard. And I was just like, that's really good to know, but I'm going to need you to listen next game.
Yeah.
So
no, that is true, and that's part of the. I think that's one of the biggest problems with with comms on the field is when they get in the heat of the moment. You get this tunnel vision, and this comes with experience. The guy that doesn't have as much experience and doesn't spend a lot of time on the field, they're the ones that are more apt to getting the tunnel vision, the loss of sensory perception. I.e. the hearing. They zone in on what they're engaged on, and stuff like this. The more you play and the more you're subjected to the environment, the more aware you become of what's around you, and the better you see and understand that stuff, and then you can learn to, pick out certain voices. And this is where the team, the core unit of those 5 guys we were talking about earlier, comes into play in a major way. You've got, let's just say you're playing a scenario game. You've got 50 guys that you're pushing to the front, and you got another 50 dudes that are coming at you, and all you hear is pop, 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 but you hear all the screaming going on.
Yep.
Well, how do you distinguish who's who and what's what?
Yep.
I'm going to pick out Tyler's voice because I know Tyler. I play with Tyler. I understand. I know what his voice is. I recognize that. So my initial reaction is to key in on that. Is to pay more attention to him audible than anything else that's going on around.
Yep.
But that's my experience, because, you know, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't hear it, because I'm focused on what's ahead of me and try not to get shot. So it's all about experience, and the communication part of that is part of your experience level, and it's something that grows with you. It's not something you just automatically get.
Yeah, no.
You have to develop that.
And so here's a really good question, just because you had kind of thrown it in there, like, because you used my name. So how important on a team do you think call signs are when communicating?
I don't think it matters. I mean, a lot of guys use it because it's now in the military it's different. We have what's called OPSEC. OPSEC is operational security. We are not allowed to use our actual names on the radio, and the reason we're not is just, you know, well, I'm not going to get into all that. That's a whole other topic. But we're not allowed to use our names on the radio. So typically, if you don't have a call sign, call signs in themselves are kind of a traditional thing. You know, like my call sign's Forge. You know, I got that for a reason. I got that because I build stuff. That's what I do. It's a hobby of mine, you know, but I'm also a mechanic by trade. So, you know, I work on cranes. I'm always building stuff. I'm fabricating stuff. You know, I've done a lot of that my entire life. So one of the guys called me Forge one day, and it just kind of fucking stuck, because that's what I do. So in that case, they're going to call me Forge. But typically, you know, if I'm in a military unit and I don't have a call sign, they're going to call me by my rank and my first initial. So it'd be Echo 5 Sierra would be, you know, Sergeant Selves, basically. You know, so that they do that to keep other people from being able to figure out who they're talking about. Which you definitely don't want to say, hey, Lieutenant so and so. Oh, there's a guy. You know, take him out. Now your command's gone. So what do you do then? Everybody goes, you know.
But it's still a good point, though, because what you had mentioned, that you don't want to know where people are. Now there are people who get their famous call signs, and that always comes through, like, no matter what. Like, hey, Slim, and it's like, oh, what, where? And Wolf.
That's Slim's on the field.
Yeah, well, I gotta go run and hit them. But I do think, I mean,
to me personally, it doesn't really matter. I don't really. It doesn't matter.
See, I like the idea of it, though, because it actually drives people to communicate. Because you have, ironically, I find on the paintball field, you have more feelings towards your call sign being used and recognized than you do your actual name.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It makes you feel like you're important. It makes you feel more like you're really involved and engaged in what's going on around you. I agree with that.
And then, but what it is, though, is if I call out to someone and I say, like, Danny, and you, and it's like, he's probably talking about some other guy. Yeah, there's some other, like, Danny on the field. It's like, no, Forge. What? Yes. What is it? Okay, you want that? All right, I got you. Like, that's the whole thing. Is I find that the nicknames help, not so much like you said, like, you're thinking of the incoming, I'm thinking of the outgoing, though, and it's that the nicknames help people catch more, and I enjoy it more. Like, even, like, I have friends who well, you actually see it even outside of paintball, like the video game world and sports and stuff like that, but I have buddies who, like, I have their first name and their last name is their nickname, because I don't even know their last name, or I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce that, so it's just like, you are this nickname. It's like, I called one of my buddies Daryl all the time, and his nickname is Stucky. And so it's like, Daryl Stucky. Like, how do I voice command it in my car? Call Daryl Stucky. And it's like, exactly. I get his voicemail. Daryl, and I'm not going to say it, and I'm like, that's not your name. This is wrong. So.
No, I think there's one key thing you just said right there. This is wrong. That statement alone. If you're to take that and dissect that a little bit, when you're talking about communications and you're talking about nicknames, you're talking about position on the field, you're talking about getting a guy moving to, you know, do whatever it is, either, you know, take an objective or, you know, fall back or engage somewhere else or whatever the case is. There is no wrong or right to any of that. You know, what I think what we're talking about here is what we do and what we use as experience, and, you know, how to get to the level of, you know, having good communication. Is what we're telling you wrong? No. Is what we're telling you right? No. It doesn't matter. Your core group of guys that you play with on a regular basis, you guys develop that communication skill. So, in other words, Tyler's saying he likes to use the nicknames. I don't care to use the nicknames. The nicknames are cool, and I use them all the time, yes. But when you're on the field, I don't need the nickname, because my ears are telling me who that person is, because I know his voice, because I play with him all the time. I don't need to say – all I need to say is, hey, move right, and they know that, you know, forward just saying move right. So
Yep.
what are they going to do? They're going to move right. If I'm playing that command position in that particular battle.
Yeah,
So
no, which it's a good point.
just don't
Like,
want to I don't want
yeah.
anybody to get the wrong idea. Like this is how you do it. No, it's not.
But it's one of those things too, is that like I think, like, I'll be frank with everyone, is, and I've said it before on the show, my worst commodity when I walk on the field is my communication. And not so much telling people where the bad guys are, that's easy, that's no problem.
Right.
Telling people where I'm going to go, because I have a very much free flowing stance where I'm like, I'm going to run to this bunker, see where it goes, and if the right side's strong, I'm going to go this way, if the left side's strong, I'm going to go that way. And it's like, we just got radios for this year, and I had a couple buddies who are like, thank God you have a radio, because it's just like you disappear, and I'm just like, where the F did you go? Oh yeah, I'm over here. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Just because once you're out of the visual communication there. So segueing that in then, so we've talked about the communication when you can see people, and we've talked about team. So let's talk about team hand gestures. So I'll be honest with you, I have not played on a team consistently enough that it's been ever worth doing. Your experience on the paintball field.
I don't know what kind of games you're playing, but them hand signals come in healthy handy.
So what I mean though is that, like, how often, because I'm going to use your big game examples, is how often when you've been making it through a big game, and unless you are sneaking through the woods, because sneaking through the woods, 100%, yeah, there's a point guy here. But at most games I've gone to, there's so many people that hand gestures to an extensive degree just aren't needed. So, Forge, get my rant go.
Yeah, I'm gonna argue on that one. I've played at a lot of scenario games, big and small. Mm-hmm. Hand signals are an absolute must in my book. The team I played on, we had 14 strong. We had 14 strong on the team. Generally, at a game, we'd have anywhere from 7 to 8, 9 guys that would show up consistently, and we generally break off into 2 groups. And my squad, I was always stuck on point because I'm small and I'm fast and I know how to shoot. So I was always on point. I didn't take command of the squad. I didn't want command. You can't command from the front in that regard when you're on point. You always have to have somebody that can see your team and see what's going on. However, if I'm in the front, everybody's following me. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting told, in my ear, I'm getting told where to go. So whoever's, the command element of my squad is saying, hey, we're going to go up here and make a right, or whatever the case is. Okay, no problem, Roger. And I would just nod my head. I'm not going to voice up. The reason I'm not voicing up is I'm on point. Okay. If I voice up, that guy's going to hear me. Okay. So I would just nod my head to let him know behind me, I understand.
Yeah. So
if I would hear something or see something, I give a command, stop or blow it up or get down, whatever the case is. That way, I'm not putting myself in jeopardy of getting, taken out as point man. So absolutely, hand signals are, in my opinion, a must. And if you use them correctly, and when I say use them correctly, it doesn't mean that you use the standby, hold, go down, whatever the case is. You can use whatever hand signal. You can use this as a hand signal if you really want to. It doesn't matter. As long as the guys that you're with, as long as the guys that you're with, understand that that's what that means. That's the most important part of communication, is understanding what the call signs are, what they mean, what your hand signals are and what they mean. If nobody understands those, or there's a miscommunication on, I don't understand that particular hand signal, then your stuff's going to start to fall apart. Yep. So, that's what it boils down to. But hand signals, yes,
I would
got to use them.
That example because you had an earpiece, because you had the radio. So I take your radio away, and you're on the field now. Teammates are eliminated. You've worked up with a new squad, so a new group of players. You're like, okay, let's go head through the woods here and go. So in that scenario, what are the hand signals you use?
You could do the same thing. It doesn't matter like I said, it doesn't really matter what your hand signals are. What I would do personally is, using my military background, what I would do is if my team got wiped out and I'm the only guy left and I hooked up with another team and they're like, okay, we want you to do this, or, we want you to tell us where to go or whatever. Okay, cool. Let's school circle real quick. Let's come up with a plan. What's our objective? Mm-hmm. I'd sit them down. I'd say, what's our objective? Okay, our objective is X, Y, Z. Okay, no problem. Here's what we're going to do. Let's get out the map. And we're going to look at our map. Okay, our objective's over here. We need to get to it. Well, right now we know there's a battle going on over here. I can hear something going on over there, but we're trying to do this on stealth. Okay, no problem. So we're going to come up this way, blah, blah, blah. We're going to route and plan. So I was taught very on the 7 Ps. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Mm-hmm. So if you take a step back, you grab your school circle of guys, it's 4 or 5 guys, whatever you got, and you say, this is what the plan is. Here's our hand signals. Here's what we're going to do. So we've already predetermined our course where we're going to go on that map, right? So now we don't need a radio because we already know we're going to go up this way. If shit hits the fan, we're, depending on what formation we're running, what the terrain is, those are all different factors, but you don't necessarily need to be, yelling and stuff. Because, there was a time when I started playing paintball in the 80s. We didn't use radios back then. The radios came in much, 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 much later. So, you had to come up with ways to do that. And that, you can still be very, very stealthy, very, very quiet. You can turn around and actually talk to somebody without talking to somebody, just, without using your voice, but, lip sync the words in a sense. And let them read your lips, or use hand gestures. There's two.
You can't
walking
lip sync
over there,
paintball
or whatever
when they're wearing a mask. So
you're right. But
Yahtzee.
This is this is back in the 80s when we didn't play with masks, bro.
Just the eye goggles. I stole them from my science class, right. So I'm gonna bring it back.
But you can do, 2 walking, and they're over there, stuff
100%.
like that. That's just general. People can understand that, and get the general idea of what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
Get down. They understand those things. So you don't necessarily have to talk. You can use those hand signals, generic sign language in a sense, to let other people know what's going on. Mm-hmm. You can even tell them, hey, I'm walking that way, and gun up, and I'm in, and I take off. Those guys, hey, follow me. Okay. They're on my 6. So you can do a lot of things with just very simple gestures.
So I'm going to rewind it a bit to when you had mentioned I got a new squad. And I asked you what hand gestures to use, and your immediate action was, screw the hand gestures right now, we need to talk about what we're doing, and then we'll talk about hand gestures. And that's the great communication that gets ignored on the paintball field, is the idea that people don't need to know it, shouldn't know it, or who cares, they're going to just go want to shoot people anyways.
Right.
If you can get a squad, like I've gotten it where I was at a...
But you're also not going to win either if you do that.
Oh, no, 100%.
You just run and gun?
No, I'm with you. So this is where my example comes in. So I was at a big game in the summer, and we had no idea what the objective ongoing was, which was to collect things. So I would be walking back, and I would tell every 2 or 3 clumps of people, and I'm like, hey, look for buildings with numbers inside our blue computer parts, bring them back to the base. And just that simple communication was, I did, 2 respawns, so a good 30 to 40 minutes between when I just been actively doing it. I walked back, and people who I hadn't told were bringing computer parts back, because it finally got spread out that this is what was happening. And is that something the general should have done? For sure, yeah. But on the field and the walk-on, the other things like that, is communicate everything to people. And the other thing, too, is that if you want to do something and see someone else do it, is, we've always said before, lead by example, but tell them what the follow-up is. What do you do next? Educate the people through experience and the explanation. Like you said, hey, we're going to move through this way. If you get lost, if you get sidetracked, call it out, but you know where the end goal is. And that, I think, is the communication that's generally lacking on the field, is a clear idea of where people should be going throughout the game.
I think that depends. That's a hard one to answer, because that comes into leadership and leadership styles. That's more of a different thing than it is communication. But however, communication is a huge part of leadership. How do I put this? Okay, as a supervisor at work, okay, I can go to an individual that works for me, and I can say, dude, I need a huge favor, bro. Can you go over here and take care of this for me? I need this done, this done, and this done. And he's going to go, yeah, sure, no problem, Danny. I got it. Poof, and he's off. I can go to another guy and try that same tactic, and he's just going to be like, whatever. But if I go into that second guy that said whatever, and I say, hey, bro, get the shit done now. If you don't get the shit done now, you're going to be working through lunch. Guess what? Dude's all over it.
Yep.
So it's a matter of knowing who you're playing with, and being able to read an individual to understand what you need to communicate to that guy.
Yep.
Some people need that extra. They need the reason as to why they're doing what they do. A military guy is not trained that way. A
Yeah.
military guy is trained to take the order and go.
Yeah.
So if Tyler came up to me and said, hey Forge, I need you to run up to this point up here. I need you to conquer this building and take this guy out, get the box in there and bring it back to me. 10-4. Why do you need the box? To me, that doesn't matter. All I heard was go take the building, take the guy out, get the box, bring it back. That's all that. What I do after that is, my training kicks in, guns up, ready, let's go. It's on.
Yep.
And go make that shit happen. But that's the difference between me and another individual. Now, if I'm in the leadership position, playing the squad leader, or the commander or the general, I'm going to have to learn very, very fast who my go-to guys are that can make shit happen. And that's where experience really comes into play.
Yep.
And again, that's an experience thing. So, is it necessary? Yes. Is it not? No. It just depends on the individual and what you're doing.
Yep. No, which is good.
However, I think if you're an outsider, like you put me in this position earlier, you gave me this scenario, your team's wiped out and you went into another team and you've all of a sudden assumed command of this and you got to run and gun, then it might not be a bad idea to go ahead and say, hey, here's the game plan. This is why. That way you're basically establishing yourself as an individual that knows what's going on, has a plan, is willing to accept that plan and make it happen. And it also gives those guys a bit of confidence in you as a leader, that, dude, this guy's thinking, he knows the battle plan. He's with it.
Yep.
If you fail to do that, then, you may lose the confidence of those guys and they may not push as hard or do exactly what you need them to do as fast as you need them to do. So.
I think too is that, like, if you're dealing with walk-on and renters and stuff like that, or even younger players or people you're just unproven to, is that when you do come in, you do the explanation, it's other people tend to jump along, like, okay, I get this, I understand it. So
exactly.
So that one's been beaten to death. So using radios, I've barely used them in paintball. One, because I just got one a year ago, like last year, and it was just like the Best Buy, whatever, like little dinky one. And what I found was I would have to turn it up so loud that I never knew when something was going to come through, and it had a horrible compatibility to an earpiece. Now I've gotten a quite nice upgraded one this winter, but radios, hindrance on the field on a mass, and should be only used for elite teams, or how would you divide? So I'm going to give you an example. You have 100 players on the field. You're the XO. Even if you're going to hit the field as well, like, it's just like your comms command. How do you divide it up? And you have unlimited number of radios, so you can have 100 radios on the field, or you can do something else. How do you divide it up for communication?
That's kind of a tough question, actually, because again, it falls back to any scenario game that you do. It always falls back to these individual groups that you have within your team. And generally, those guys have their own structure already set up. If they're running comms, they're going to have their own setup. However, they need to be able to communicate back to the comms commander or the general, whoever they report to. They need to be able to talk to them. So that could be as simple as a channel change. It could be as complicated as now the guy's got to run 2 radios. Which one does he monitor the most?
Yep.
You know what I mean? For me, I think I would delegate it to where, I would have, depending on what the mission is too. There's so many variables here. It's not even funny. If I was to try,
let's simplify it a little bit.
We're
going for,
I could go like 900 directions in this thing. So
we're
going
attack and defend with, I'm going to use like the Castle Conquest as the example. So there's a main objective. You have 3 points before the main objective, and you are the assaulting team. How do you divide up your comms? There's no objectives of like finding stuff on the way. It is literally just take the points, capture the flag. Once 2 have fallen, you can assault the main.
Well, I would do it 2 front. Honestly, I would have 2 different things going at the same time, and I would split the team. I would have a smaller unit going after one object, I would have a main unit going after another object, making more noise, allowing those guys that are being stealthy trying to take this other mission over here. I would kind of separate it up that way in a sense. I would give each one of those commanders a radio, and I would verbally be in contact back and forth with those guys. Now, the little guys that are underneath those commands don't necessarily need to be in contact with me. And here's why. If I gave out, say I had 100 players on the field, if I gave out 100 radios and I said, hey, every time something goes on, call me. What do you think is going to happen to my radio?
It blows up.
It's going to blow up. It's just like your iPhone, I mean, you do something and everybody hears about it and everybody's calling you to find out what happened. Dude, Danny wrecked his car. Everybody's calling you to find out if Danny's okay.
Yep.
So you have to delegate it in such a way that you want just the key personnel to be in contact with you. Nobody else needs to know what I'm thinking or what I'm telling everybody. That's up to the squad leaders of those individual units to be in charge of that. So it's a matter of delegation of authority in a sense. I don't want everybody talking to me. I want just the key personnel that I need to know where you're at, what you're doing, what do you see?
Yep.
How many foe do you have in front of you? What are they carrying? Which direction are they moving? What's your location? All this type of information. That's what I need. I'm not going to get that from the regular gunner. I'm going to get that from my squad leader.
Yep,
that's out there. So that's how I would delegate that.
Yeah, which I gave you an answer where I knew eventually you would go, so I'm not going to lie there. Because it's a good point. Like, it's the whole thing is that too many radios is a problem. And
yeah, so it's a huge problem.
We'll keep slimming it down, sort of thing. So let's say we've gone from 100 as a big game to 50 players on each team. At that point, what I would do, similar to what you said, is delegate it. So I get to answer this one, hands up right now. Is you delegate a little bit more, where you do have your comm leaders within each group. So you have your 50. Even amongst the 50, there's going to be preferences for who goes with who. And I would say that, okay, let's all be on one main radio. This is the main station sort of thing. But if you're looking for someone, only do your own little squad ones almost at that point, or preferences. Because I think it's one of those things is that you use radios on the paintball field for three things possible. One is to find your buddy, just straight up, I lost you, where are you? The field's moved and I want to make sure we have a fun day playing together. Two is objective relays. What are we looking for? What are we doing? Things like that. And then the final one is the opposite way, is the battlefront coming back. I need guys on the right. I need guys on the left.
Right.
I think when we start to look at a team and individual player, like when you're the bottom looking up sort of thing, I think you should have a radio to find friends first. That's the first reason to get a radio.
Here's one thing that we're missing too. It is kind of a safety thing too. I mean, everybody that if you have a radio, I would definitely suggest to use it and kind of know what channel somebody that's important is on.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a safety thing. If you're out in the woods somewhere and guy trips, falls in a hole, breaks his freaking leg or something stupid, that guy needs medical assistance. No doubt about it. So there has to be a chain of command, up through, to get that guy help. Instead of everybody just flipping the hell out, there has to be that. So.
But for the average player, like you said, if you have a radio, bring it out, use it for friends, to get in touch with them, so you don't keep losing each other on the field. And then to learn the objectives, because one of the big things is that I've always found going to big games is that generals give directions, but it's based on what time you go on the field that you get the objective for whatever mission. So. I think that's why I like the idea of radios, is that you get to communicate constantly, and then the final one is just better executed plays. But I think like you had mentioned earlier, is I think vocal communication, hand signals can give you the highly executable plays that you can do and be super effective on the field, and radios are more of an Achilles heel for people wanting to use them too much, but are great after the first two are worked on. So the tactical tip from me would be work on your vocal and your hand, and then introduce radios once that game's strong. But I'm talking.
Here's something else that we haven't really touched on either. And you're right. This is going to be more for the experienced player. One thing that we used to do on our team was we would run comms, but we wouldn't run comms. We'd have our earpieces in. We'd have our radios on. But playing point man, which I did a lot, I love it. It's freaking fun. I love the adrenaline. It's just fucking. I'm an adrenaline junkie, man. If I can do it and I can get hurt, I'm gonna try it. You know.
I just end up at point because I get bored at the back. I'll honestly like it's
Yeah.
like one
Well,
of those
there's
things.
that
I'm
too.
like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hang back and like direct everybody, and then I'm like, I'm the furthest point person, and I'm like, this didn't work out well. I can lead by
Right.
example. I'm gonna keep rushing.
But one of the things we used to do is we would interact using all of those communication tactics. We would use radio, we'd use voice, and we'd use hand signal, and we would switch those off. And how that would work, just as a for instance, Stu, he's our squad. He's our squad leader. He's 3 guys back from where I'm at. So he's back there. He's in touch. He's got us. There's 5 of us. So there's our rear guy. There's Stu, our command element, and then you've got your right gunner, your left gunner, and your point man, or left and right. Doesn't matter. You can flip these 2 around. But the idea is when you're walking in a line, your point gunner's shooting straight. You have a right gunner, you have a left gunner, you have the command element that's telling everybody what to do, and you have your guy in the back watching your 6. So you're walking in a line, you're going into engage. The command would be on the radio, and he'd be telling everybody what's going on. Yep. He'd be like, gunner 1, or right gunner or left gunner, or whatever the case is, whatever the call sign is, or however he decides to get in touch with that individual. Everybody else can hear what's going on, but he's saying, hey, check that bush over there. I thought I saw something move. That's going to wake him up and get him more attentive on that bush to make sure that there's nothing in that bush. If there is, he's going to engage it. But at the same time, he'd be telling me in my ear, how many guys do you see up there? And I don't want to get shot, so I'm going 2.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And the 2 gunners may be talking to each other. All right, I see one over here. I see one over there. And they're relaying that information because they may need to switch, or they may need to switch where both guns are going the same direction. Just depends on what's going on. So that communication, there is no wrong way to do it. You can use all 3 ways to communicate with each other. You just have to be able to be smart enough to determine which one is the best type of communication to use in the predicament that you're in.
Yep.
So you have to be aware of your surroundings, have situational awareness of what's going on, be smart enough to understand what's going on, and be smart enough also too to make the decision as to what needs to happen. Yep. But I think most of that responsibility falls on that squad leader. You know what I mean? And he's got to be in control.
And I think that's some of the best example, like using the 4 players, like getting 3 buddies to go paintballing or at a big game or something, super easy, and running that point system with the communication structure going back helps so much, because
it does.
Most of the time at an inexperienced paintball field, the guy who's running point is the one who's shouting back the most at everyone, which works great if they're stuck in a bunker and I can't advance anymore. But it's like you should have had people spread out properly before you got to that bunker, because once you're in the bunker and you can't move anymore, odds are the guy that you didn't tell to swing farther left can't swing farther left now because he's stuck in a different bunker than you. And
here's something else to think about too. The point man is typically the first guy shot.
Yep.
So if the point man gets shot, what do you do then?
Yep.
So that gunner that's right behind point man now becomes point man. So you have to be able to be versatile in changing your not just your communication, but you have to be versatile enough to be able to change what your function is in that squad.
Yep.
And I think that those type of things come with a lot of experience and a lot of knowing who your guys are. Now, if you watch Speedball and you understand that game, you'll see that happening. You'll see that the guy, one guy gets shot out, in the snake or something, and now there's nobody guarding the snake. They're going to automatically whoever's in the middle or whatever the position is, the guy, he's going to dart on over there and take that position, to make sure nobody's coming up that way.
Yep.
So it's that same type of scenario. No matter, and even again using Speedball, when you hear them play, and this is awesome because you can learn a lot from Speedball.
For communication, 100%, because it's
absolutely, but not just that. That's a perfect close quarters drill.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Speed. Yeah, I mean, it's you learn the comms, you learn how to move, you learn what to look for, you learn that crossfire stuff. I mean, it's that game in itself. I hear a lot. There's a lot of back and forth about speedballers suck and milsim guys suck and this and that. No, you take every aspect of this sport, and if you're a smart guy, you can do this. take every aspect of the sport that you see: speedball, milsim, scenario play. Even just going out and doing a rec ball game, or using airsoft, or whatever the platform is. You can learn something that you can. I think you and I were talking about this before we started the show. You can take stuff that you learn from one segment and put it into use in another segment.
100%.
And yeah, and the speedball stuff, I watch those guys a lot. I do a lot of photography for those guys. And in doing that, I've learned some of their communication style. I've definitely learned and seen some CQB stuff that brings back some of my training, but also, keeps me aware. It's like, oh shit, next time I got to remember that, because that's why I failed the last time. So there's always that stuff. And I think that's part of that learning, and part of that, experience gathering that we all need to be able to do.
And I think it's one of those things, like, I was a speedballer first, and then I came more and more into the mag-fed milsim world. And
Sure.
And my big thing was, sorry, I just got to adjust the mic there. My big thing was that I learned so much from speedball, and I watched so many things and picked up weird little habits from it, but transitioned into the milsim so much more. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, I love a CQC field faster than a woods ball field, just because it's faster game.
Absolutely.
But one thing is that, like, everyone has to play every position. And, like, using your 4-man example there, is everyone should be point, everyone should be right, everyone should be left, and everyone should be command. One, just to learn if you're good at it, and two, that if the point's getting pissed off at the command because he's not giving enough orders, it's like, well, nothing's changed, or there's too much to tell you, or I really can't see it. Like, what you see and I see are different. And to loop it back to communication, like, in general, communications is to say what I see to you. And fun fact of the day is, I'll see the field differently, the colors differently, who's a threat on the field differently 9 times out of 10 than the next person 100%. And my communication is to make sure that what I say, what you say, sync up, and it is the most effective. And
absolutely.
That's the hardest thing that I think people take, is that what you say and isn't necessarily right or wrong, it's what's going to be the most effective. And you just have to keep trying, and if you do fail, don't think that it's because something was wrong. It's just something wasn't fully right, which helps out a lot of people, because it's like...
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Going right and attacking from the right side was the right move. When you went was the bad time. Or you went at the right time, but you just completely missed who it was. Like, even using the example, I was running point in that walk-on game a week ago. It was me and one other friend, and me and him were just, like, we played a dodgeball game. And dodgeball was when you get shot from one side, you have to walk and join the other team. Really, really fun game if you want to play a CQC.
That sounds wicked, actually.
Oh, yeah. Tons of fun. And it's a small field. So, but one of
you
the
were
jokes,
my friend, now you're my enemy.
Yeah, exactly. And then one of the jokes is, though, is that when you switch sides, assuming one team's not dominating, you come onto the field with the knowledge of what the other players are. Now, I didn't use it to a full cheating advantage, but I was like, okay, I know who the threats are on the other team because we played a couple already. But one of the jokes is that my buddy shot, like, we were on opposite teams every time because me and him talked and we're working well together, and he shot me first every single time. And I was like, I don't want to be your friend, but I'm going to come join your team and then play with you, and I'll forgive you after this. But one thing is that me and him worked down the field to the point, and who was the sacrificial pawn every single time was me, because I would make the move, he knew I would make the move, and he had a better shot than I did. Well, one time I went to go make a move, like, one time I made a move and got 2 guys, and then the last guy spun, like, not spun, but, like, ran around his bunker to get away from me, which put him in perfect sign for my buddy Matt, because I would attack from the right, he would be posted up on the left. And then there was one time I made the move, and I was like, okay, where's the shadow? Where's the shadow? And he goes, shadow's in the center. And I'm like, okay, shadow's in the center, because we could, like, just the way the lights worked, I could see it. And I'm like, okay, that person's looking left, it'll be fine. I booked it to go bunker this person, and they were posted up on me. And I just came around the corner, and I'm like, oh, it's going to hurt. And I didn't break, though, unfortunately, when I went to go shoot them. And it was a respawn, it wasn't a dodgeball one at that time, but that was one of those examples that, like, perfect communication. I knew exactly where the person was. I knew I had to go bunker them. I knew I was probably going to get shot. They were completely posted up on me and ready for me to make that move, though. And that was my fault, is that I made an assumption. It was a newerish, not as experienced a player as myself. So I overestimated them, made the assumption, and I got shot because of it. And then later on, I made that assumption again, and I was right. So it was like, this isn't helping my ego. But it was one of those things, is that communication on the field was great. And the other thing, too, is that unless burned, don't assume someone won't back you up. Because one thing on communication that I find that people don't like is they don't like talking back and forth with people that they feel like they're not really going to understand, or they're not doing what I'm saying. And what I've done sometimes is just let them direct me for a while, kind of see the field from their perspective, and I'll learn pretty quick, is this person's stuck looking left. And then I'll run back. I'm like, can you check, like, spot check right, spot check? And they're like, oh my God, there's someone like 2 bunkers up. And I'm like, thank you. That's the person I was looking for. I'm going to shoot them now.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that sometimes it's not telling other people what you see, but having them tell you what they see, to 1, understand the field better, and 2, understand what they're missing. Because there's always an assumption, but to have someone tell you, well, they're only giving me digits on this, I'm like, this is where you're missing your full equation. And that's one thing I've learned a lot on the field.
To kind of add to that, this is kind of you touched on this for about a half a second. You said something about having the guys, switch up their positions.
Yeah, change positions, like in the rules.
Yeah, right. And when we train, in the military, and then we actually, when I was living in Cali, I had some land up there, and I would bring guys up and I would train them militarily. And we would do all kinds of crazy stuff up there. We would set actual booby traps. We would set, IEDs and stuff like this. Obviously non-lethal. So before anybody yells and jumps up and down and screams, but we would set up, flashbangs. We would set up, different things, to pop up flares, stuff like this. So if they hit a mine, or they hit a trip, or something like this, things would happen. But we would also, take these guys and we'd put them in the same scenario we'd run through 5 or 6 times, but we'd take the guys and rotate them in different positions. So now they get, like you were saying, they have a better understanding of what to do. And not just that, they also get a better understanding of what to look for. So, it's when the guy's playing left gunner, you're right, he gets stuck looking left all the time. But his senses tell him, once in a while, check right. Even if his position is left, he knows what the right gunner should be looking for. But he also knows that he's not going to see everything, just like I'm not going to see everything. So you kind of, after you go through this training enough times and you get to, play those different positions enough time, you automatically have this wherewithal of, okay, I know I'm supposed to be doing this, but at the same time, I can do this. I can multitask. Yep. And, and become a better player that way, but also back up my buddy that's next to me at the same time, and, kind of help each other and communicate to each other what's going on. And that's what really makes that core group of guys really start to function and play well, because they've learned each other's position. They've learned their strong points. They've learned their weak points. They've learned how to talk to each other, either verbally, hand signals, radios, whatever the case is. They have that communication and all those different things. Once you learn that with a core group of guys, those guys are freaking unstoppable. And I've watched teams that have, started out really messed up. I mean, they had no communication skills. They didn't know what they're doing. They didn't even know how to freaking hold their markers right, and they're getting their ass kicked day in and day out. But 6 months later, after you give them a couple pieces of information here and you let them do this and you try them that, hey, come on out here. We're going to give you some training. Boom, 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 boom. Within 6 months, these guys are slaughtering, just everybody's following them because they know what's going on and they know how to do the game. And, people want that information. So if you can learn the communications and all these other things we're talking about, mainly the communications, but you can learn those things and become a core group of guys. Everybody else is going to want to follow you because you now become a leader because you know what you're doing. Yeah.
And one of those things is that what I almost recommend is trial by fire. So you just made a good example. Like, here's a core group that starts initially and then becomes better together. Now, let's have a core group that is already great and you have to bring in someone new. I'm going to say my piece. I'm going to see my piece first, and then I want to see what the actual person who does it more says after. My initial thought would be put the guy in the command center, and the reason is that let me talk it out, is that he has no idea what everyone's preferences are. So I'm going to tell you to go left, I'm going to tell you to go right, I'm going to tell you to be the front guy. I don't know if you're the fast front guy, I don't know if you're a better right-handed or left-handed shooter, but I'm going to be in that position, and then you can learn something new from the guy being in a different position and having someone else teach you. But the other thing too is that he'll see it all unfold. If you put him in point and he's being taught point, that's great, but if he gets shot, it's like, I only lost because the right guy was the problem, the left guy was when you're in command and you're stopping and you see it unfold, that's when you see it. Now, am I talking about, like, using the speedball example, the guy, you're in the semifinals at the NXL and you put him in the command center? No, I'm talking about the walk-on days and the rec days and the training sessions, is like,
no,
where it doesn't really matter, but it
Sure.
does at the same time. And then from there, it's like, okay, now you're going to learn point in depth. Now you're going to learn right and left in depth. But I think the time that they can learn the most, and you can learn the most, is trying to direct people. And if you, like, well, I always direct people in the field, then you're in the wrong, then you've already done the position, move somewhere else. And that's what I'd recommend for most players to try out, is doing something like that.
No, I think that's a phenomenal idea. We used to, in the military, we used to have, our command would do this. They would have what they call the command switch, and they would do it one time a year, and they would take, just a random individual. It's all done by, name in a hat, and you draw your name out of the hat, and you got to be the XO for the day, you got to be the CO for the day, you got to be the first sergeant, blah 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 blah, down the chain of command. So you typically have PFCs, lance corporals, as the CO and XO of the company. Those guys are responsible for shit. Our company had 400 and something people in it. I mean, so now they're responsible for all 400 something individuals.
Yep.
They learn real quick the amount of pressure that the command element is under. And so in saying that, when they're done with that day, they're so beat up mentally, because they're having to make all these decisions that they really literally have no concept of. And, at the end of the day, they're just like, holy shit. The next day, they come outside and say, hey, go do this. They're, no problem, sir. And they're gone.
Yeah, I want simplistic again.
Yeah, exactly. Because, there's a lot of pressure there. But it also gives that person a great respect of what the command element does. So putting that guy in that position where he's got 5 unknown guys, and he's in charge, go make this happen. And you've got 2 or 3 other teams out there that their command structure and their element is completely intact, and they're going to battle, the new team. That guy that's in charge is going to feel an insane amount of pressure. He's going to have a different outlook, when he gets on a team that has a command element already, and that command element says go. Yep. He's going to, no problem. Aye, sir, it's going. And I think that's a great thing to do, and it really opens the eye of the individual that's stuck in that position. And that also works, putting him in a different position. Left gunner becomes tail gunner, or tail gunner becomes point man. It's the same stress, it's just different. What I mean?
And the other thing too is that individual strengths get you on a team, get you noticed, or get you somewhere. But what you bring to the team is what leaves the longevity of it. And the age-old statement is always leave it better than when you first got there. And that's the one thing is, and the reason I love the idea of putting the guy in the command is that it shakes everyone up. Because I've seen teams get stale because one person was in charge for too long. Not to say that they're not a bad leader, but just because everyone was used to it. And
well, they become complacent. Yeah.
100%. Yep. So I think we'll leave it at that, because we're going to segue into a new show, and that's about team structure and stuff. And there's a couple other people I want to bring in for that one, but
sweet.
But the communications one was a lot of fun. So at the end, after everything we've talked about, communication, to everyone who's listening, so what do you think are the biggest takeaways for communication, the biggest the mistakes that are most commonly made, and then what your biggest learning curve for communication was? Like, what's your example of when you realize how important communication could be?
That's a lot of, that's 3 tough questions right in a row. I don't know if I have the capacity to answer those.
You finished your beer a while ago. It's fine.
Yeah, I know. I should have another one. I would say probably the biggest thing to take away, I think, from all of this stuff on communication, or anything that you're curious about in the sport, and not just in the sport, but anything else, don't be afraid to try new stuff. Don't be afraid to take somebody else's advice, or try something that you've seen done, or something you've never tried before. Don't be afraid to do those things, because you'd be surprised how quickly you can, you try something and you realize you like it. It's like, I guess I can put it to you this way. I've got a 9-year-old kid, and she asked me what the craziest thing I ever ate was. And I gave her an answer, and I'm not going to disclose that on air, because I really don't want the whole entire Facebook land and YouTube land and everybody else knowing what I eat.
It was a lot
but
of
I told her. No.
Okay.
But anyway, I told her, and she was just horrified. I mean, absolutely horrified. And she says, "Well, did it taste good?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "That just it doesn't sound right." I said, "Well, how do you know it doesn't taste good until you try it?" And she just kind of, she sat back in her chair, so we had, some food at the house here. I had those little green cabbage deals, where they called, I always mess up the name of them. They're like little tiny cabbage balls. That's what I call them.
Spicy or?
No, just like, it's like a little tiny head of lettuce, man. It's a looks like a little baby ass head of lettuce.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what they're called.
You know what I mean? Anyway,
I don't do vegetables.
Yeah. Anyway, you steam them, or throw them in the nuker or whatever, and you throw some butter on there and eat them. Well, I was eating those things, and she's like, "That doesn't." I said, "Here, try one." She's like, "No." I said, "Well, how do you know you don't like it?" I can't get her away from them now. She eats them all the time. So that's kind of the point. It's like, don't be afraid to try something new, even if it sounds ridiculously stupid and you think you're going to look like a fool doing it. Try it anyway. You never know, and it may be one of the coolest things that you've ever learned to help you communicate better on the field.
Yeah.
So that would be that. Biggest lesson I learned in communicating is, if somebody tells me something, take it into account at all costs, because it could, for me personally, and I'm saying this from the military perspective, if you don't listen, you're dead. So, if you want to translate that into paintball, don't get listened. You're going to be out. If the guy says, "Hey, there's one on the left," okay, don't assume that he's going to take that guy. Look for yourself. Always pay attention to what everybody's telling you. Always absorb that information. I think that would be the biggest thing that I would stress to to players, old and new. Don't be afraid to listen and learn. Absorb what's going on. Have that 360 degree spherical sense of awareness as to what's going on around you. Absorb every bit of that: smell, sight, hearing, everything. Use it all. Use all your senses. Mm-hmm. Go for it. The third question, I have no idea what it was.
I'm trying to remember too now.
I totally lost it. Kind of my little rant.
Damn it. Okay, I'm going to answer the first two, and then I'm going to try and remember what the third one's.
Any questions from the live audience?
No, it's just, Danny's been here pretty much the whole time. He just commented about the clock system. No, it's actually been quiet. We've had a lot of people in and out all show. But,
awesome.
So mine was, my takeaway, the biggest from the show, is that there is no perfect way to communicate, because each one is unique in its own situation. And ironically, teamwork is the best communication, but assigned teamwork. So I've been playing paintball individually. I'll be frank. Most of the time I jump out, play. I
got a question.
Go ahead.
Did it hurt to think of that? That was badass the way you said. That was perfect.
What?
You made my brain just go into another zone when you said that. That what you're.
Okay.
Anyway, that was cool.
I'm gonna have to replay this now and then figure out what I said. But yeah, just that I play individually, not intentionally, but because I have to work later that day. I'm going to jump in and play paintball quick. I'm going to make it to an event. I've lost everybody because I play point so much. And so one of the reasons I wanted to get a radio so bad was so that if one line of sight's gone, I can communicate with people still. And that was my biggest thing, is that teaching people that, okay, if I can't communicate XYZ way, then there's ABC again. And there's always LMN that can communicate to me. It's one of those things, is that there is always an option of some sort. And yep. I think sticking with battle buddy systems, something that's always been my focus for this next year, 2017 paintball, is keep battle buddies around, because
Yeah.
it's been my worst things.
Well, let's think. Calm and anything else in paintball, man. It's all about, it's all about working on that core group of guys that you play with and developing all those things together.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make it fluid. You can't. I think one of the biggest failures too that people do is they'll try one thing with one group and they'll go to a different group and try the same thing or something completely different, and then they get confused themselves and they don't understand why they're not communicating well.
Yep.
And you're not going to get that if you're jumping groups.
Yep.
You're only going to get good, solid communication with your folks is if you stick together, you play in it day in and day out. You try different things as a group, not as an individual.
Yeah.
It's a we sport, not an I sport.
Yeah.
So
my most embarrassing / the reason I learned to communicate was from last year. It's not a single event, ironically. It's a span, and I realized that by not communicating with people, I let them down and I made them think lesser of themselves. I have a bad habit of communicating. I would wander off and go, because I'm bored, I'm gonna go find out what the left flank's doing, and I would leave people behind because I'm like, you're gonna stay here and keep doing this. And
see, you're the guy that I was looking for earlier. That I would hand a radio and I would send you out by yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say, go recon this position for me and call me back and let me know what you find.
Yeah, 100%.
You're that guy.
Oh yeah, all the time. I will never stay still most of the time. And if I'm running low on paint, I'm like, all right, let's go out in fashion. I think I hit my goal of 2016, where I never walked off a big game with air or paint being the reason I walked off. I think I hit that every big game I went to, and almost every walk-on game, and the ones where I didn't, where I was in a defending position and I'm like, I just literally am out and there's nothing more I can do. But
Right.
But yeah, that was my biggest thing, is I hurt a lot of people and friends' feelings because I didn't communicate with them, and it became a running joke, and it was like I became unreliable because of it. So 2017 is my focus, is not to do that, but to have a battle buddy and keep someone with me. Now I'm trying to remember what the third thing was, and I was hoping it would come to me while I was thinking, and I forget.
The same problem I got. Can't remember shit.
What was it? It was something simple-ish. That. Oh, nope, it's gone. I was gonna say I had a different question now, and it's gone. What would be your recommendation for people to work on the most for their communication? So, like, what is the training that you can do for communication? There we go. That's going to be the final one. Is how do you train to communicate better?
Just simply doing it, man. I mean, there isn't really any. I mean, it's not like when you're a singer and you go through the
So here's my example. Is if I say that I'm not getting my shots on, and like I'm not covering the field enough, you're like, okay, it's because your left hand shots are bad. You just have to go out and just mentally say, do a left hand. My example would be walk out onto the field with the intention of not shooting paint and just talk to people, and then do a second one where you go out again with the intention of not shooting a lot of paint and just listen to people.
I mean, yeah, you could. I think with communication, you have to be a good listener too. So I mean, yeah, having I guess one way you could do it is just kind of, if you're not used to going out and talking to people, like you said, just go out and find some individual that's at the game. He looks interesting to you for some reason. He's got a cool gun. You like his gear or whatever. Just go up there and start having a conversation with the guy. And that's just, I mean, like when I first started doing radio shows and podcasting and stuff like this, I was very, very afraid to say what was on my mind. I was very afraid to, just generally talk, and it would just come out all stupid. And it still does occasionally. But the more you do it, the more, the easier it gets. My wife, she has to do an evaluation, and part of her evaluation for her job to get promoted is she has to stand up in front of a group of people and have a conversation with those people. She's deathly afraid of that. You know why?
Number
Because she
one
doesn't have the
fear.
experience. You know,
Yeah.
well, it's
Public speaking is the number one fear in
but
most people.
yes, but it's communication, and that's the point.
Yeah.
That you know, it is a fear. You know, but what do you do to get over that fear? You have to go accomplish that. You have to go do it, and until you go do it, you know, you're just going to remain afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's pretty much what I told her. It's just like, dude, it's not that hard. Just get up there. Well, I'm going to look like an idiot. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You know,
Exactly.
just go up there, and you know, everybody looks like a buffoon when they start something new. You know, I mean, I didn't look like a tactical player when I first showed up on the field. Fucking hell, I had zits all over my face and bigger glasses than these, and I didn't know what I was doing. I went and got some training in the military, thank you, United States Marine Corps, and I came back, and people see me on the field and go, "Oh fuck, stay away from that guy. He knows what he's doing."
Yep.
You know, so it's because I went out and did it. You know, and same thing with radio and podcast. I'm not afraid to come on here and talk and sound like an idiot. You know, whether I know what I'm talking about or not is irrelevant. I can have a conversation with people and answer questions, talk to people, engage with people. Why? Because I got on the mic and I started doing it. And now I'm at a point to where I'm comfortable doing it. It doesn't bother me. I mean,
Yep.
do I still in the back of my head, do I look like an idiot? Yeah, I still do. I always wonder about that. I think that's natural. That's normal. But I don't care. You know, if you guys get something from what I'm saying, I did my job.
Yeah.
You know.
It's the age old thing is in paintball we face a fear of getting shot with every step we take, but we never stop taking that step. And the moment you stop
Yeah.
taking the step, you see people move past you and they inspire you to make the steps too. And that's one of the things I always tell every friend and family member,
Yep.
because we talked about before, paintball is constantly there, is to become more successful, like to have a better chance of winning, making the shot, or being effective. I have to put myself in more harm's way. Communication is no different. To communicate better, I have to assume like my communication is right, but it could be wrong, and I could be put people in jeopardy. Same way, it's paintball. It's not a life and death situation, but it is something you can learn from, perfect from, and then
Yeah.
take it from there. So,
Absolutely.
And I'm
Could
not
agree
going
with
to
more.
let you keep going because I know you are going to take that and make it totally longer
Nope.
than it needs to be right now because we're already an
Nope.
hour
That was well said. I'm gonna leave it
overhand.
alone.
So thank you everyone for checking it out. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream. Forge, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on the Facebook there. It's Danny Selves. You can find me there. I'm also involved with Nate Jester Tactical over there, Jester's Tactical Sports Center. We have a new show that we just launched yesterday. Actually, it was our debut show. It's called The Panel. So you can go on the Faceplant there and find us there. But other than that, that's about where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and stay tuned. I got some podcast stuff coming up on the Forge Unmasked on SoundCloud.
Nice.
You can go there. There's some older episodes that are up there. Been
Great
kind of
listens
in
too.
hiatus. Yeah, I've been on hiatus for a little while from that one, but working on some new projects, and that show is going to be it's going to make its reappearance here pretty soon. Pretty soon. Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
awesome. And then, so you guys all know me, Tyler, or Avent from Talking Tactical Podcast. I will be taking over the stream mostly going forward. Dusty has stepped away more recently, so more announcements on that. Hopefully he'll be joining us again down the road. Just life got in the way, hence a little bit of a delay here at the end of December. The new thing for us, though, is that you can find us on Talking Tactical on Instagram. So that's going to be our main feed. Hopefully it'll start syncing up with Facebook a little bit better. As always, you can check out our Tactical Tip Tuesdays. Feel free to message us on the Facebook page, show ideas, you want to come on the show, anything like that, let us know, and we will see you guys on the field. Have a great one.
Pew pew.